good evening, all you wonderful people. Thank you for coming along. Yes, Steve says hi. He definitely needs to be animated. Steve! Yeah. All sorts of things we could do with Steve. Yeah, Servo definitely needs to do a little bit of a wave. I'd like to have him move his arms as well, so he could turn a little bit, but also wave his arms. Okay, before we get into other things, I acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and to Aboriginal elders and peoples from other communities who may be taking part in this live stream today. Now, we got lots of the regulars here tonight, which is fantastic. Good to see you all here. I'm not going to do a whole bunch of shout outs, but I see am I wearing pants? I'm going to stand up and prove yes. I am wearing pants. So that means yes, I am. I think that means I'm ready to leave. I can go at a moment's notice. So the reason for this out of schedule live stream is that at my normal live stream time tomorrow, I'm going to be on the road heading to Canberra in a truck with my dad to pick up a couple of pick and place machines, which is really, really exciting. Yes, cable tie road trip. And this road trip came about thanks to Iggy, who is in the chat here, because after my my public appeal a little while ago, a few weeks ago, some time ago, where I asked if anybody knew of like a barn find pick and place machine. What I was hoping to find was something like a company that has a pick and place machine they're not using anymore, sitting in the corner of their factory, and maybe they'd be willing to part with it at a second-hand price. And Iggy hooked me up. He hooked me up really well. So thanks, Iggy. I owe you at least a coffee and maybe a pastry to go with it. So Henrik says live stream from the road. I'm going to try to film a little bit. I'm going to take the main camera with me. I've got a couple of batteries all charged up, and I'm going to take my laptop, which has Final Cut on it, so I could even do some editing, but I don't know how practical that's going to be. I'm just going to try to record what I can of the trip, and I suppose I could do a couple of quick impromptu live things just from my phone. We will see how it goes. Yeah, so Cable Tie said, so you didn't get what you wanted, you got a new one, not a used one. Yeah, well, I got two, one of which is new. So the situation is that the person I'm buying them from, and I'm not entirely sure how comfortable he is being public about all of this, so I'm going to be a little bit circumspect about it. But basically, he bought a KO A4 pick and place machine early last year and was really impressed with it and ended up modifying it. He wrote his own software to control it, and I was just having a chat to him about it on the phone this morning. What he's done sounds really, really interesting. Basically what he's done is reverse engineered all of the communications with the motion controller and everything that's on the machine. So he's written a Python layer that sits in front of it and allows his software to use the Python library to control the machine, which means that we can then use that as a shim layer in front of something like OpenPNP. And that could be a really, really interesting thing. So anyway, what he did was got the first machine and did all of this work on it to fine tune it for his own requirements. And it was working really well. So he bought a second one and then did the same thing to that. And then he bought a third one. And the third one is actually still literally brand new, like factory original. And what I am buying from him are his first machine and his third machine. So I'm getting one which is factory original and one that he has retrofitted with a better quality camera for the up camera, and that has his control system with his Python front end running on it. And that should give me the best of both worlds. What I can do is have one machine which will run in a very predictable way, which is the factory machine, and then I'll have the other one which I can use to experiment. I could either return it to factory, but what I really want to do is use his Python driver layer and put OpenPNP in front of that, because I'm super familiar with OpenPNP. I've been using it for years. I've written, I've done modifications to it, added code to it. So that will be really, really cool. Oh yes, Henrik says, remember to dislike while you still can. Yes, go and hit that dislike button. Because, oh hang on, no, I think, what's the deal with that? So I think there will still be a dislike button, but it won't show the dislike count, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, yeah. Yes, that's right. As Peter says, dislike and like are the same for YouTube stats. It's just engagement points. If you get lots and lots and lots of dislikes, that's lots of engagement. So from the YouTube algorithm point of view, that's good too. Yes. Yes. Oh, Iggy says, it may become a cake at that awesome shop in Melbourne CBD. So yes, are you talking about, what's the name of that place? There in Lygon Street, there's a, there's an Italian takeaway place. Someone's going to remember what it is. They're like a, yeah, they've got two shops. Brunetti's. Is it Brunetti's that you're thinking of? Because, Iggy, I owe you more than a coffee. Yes. Oh, in the city in one of the arcades. Okay. Awesome. Well, I'll arrange something. So, it actually kind of discombobulated me tonight, sitting down to do this live stream, because it's so out of the normal sequence. So I had dinner, came in here, and I was doing stuff. I was working on some boards for a client, and then it got towards live stream time, and it just seems weird to be doing this at 8 p.m. But I know that for many people, this is actually a better time. People in Europe, this is not horrible, whereas 10 a.m. Sunday, my time, is pretty horrible. All right. Now, okay, so this whole thing with the pick and place machines, before I get into that, okay, very important. I want to give a shout out to Sion and his latest video, which is about the vacuum. Someone's got to come up with a name for it. The solder stencil vacuum table box bed thingy. So that's what it's got to be called from now on. Those of you who haven't seen it, check out Unexpected Maker and the vacuum table. I've built one, it's really cool. I've been using it for boards. I've got a bunch of boards that I've run through it. And in Sion's video, he demonstrates the accuracy, the registration of the position. And I can confirm it is amazing. In fact, what I've been doing is, for the boards that I was assembling over the last couple of days, I didn't even bother mounting the stencil. So I've got a framed stencil. I didn't even bother mounting the stencil in the stencil holder. I just picked it up, put it down, adjusted it, and I've got, unfortunately you can't, the field of view isn't that good. I've got one of those, magnifying lamps on a stand sort of thing that you can move around. So I just look down through it and optically align the apertures with the PCB. It's really easy. With my foot, I just hit the vacuum button. It sucks into place, put on the paste, turn off the vacuum, lift it up. Perfect. It works really, really well. So Sion, yeah, unexpected suck. So Sion, good work on that. I'm really impressed. Okay. So I've been wondering a little bit about what to talk about in relation to these pick and place machines. There is going to be lots more about it, but I think possibly the interesting thing is not really so much the machines at this point. It is the implications and what this has tipped me over into. So the world has been through some changes. You may have noticed. There have been some issues with supply chains, there have been issues with parts, there have been issues with exports out of China, there have been just so many things going on. We are in one of these situations where a couple of years ago, things seem to be going on a nice logical progression. You know, there are issues that come up, there are always issues that come up. But I wouldn't have thought ahead to the current circumstances and where we are now. Basically, our world has been sort of just given a really good shake, and that can be really scary, it can be really bad, it can also be really good for many people. And so it's really made me think a lot about what it is that I want to be doing and what I can do that is worthwhile, and kind of accelerated plans. Made me think about doing things that in my head were probably a few years down the track. And it's when everything gets shaken up, I was just thinking, why not kind of go for it? There are things that I've been kind of afraid to take the next step on, and I figure, to hell with it, why not see what I can do with the circumstances and the opportunities and things. So in the past, I've already mentioned something I've talked about with my friend Chris. So I've had this idea for a while after working with Chris that I wanted to create some kind of a facility / service, which is like, and I'm having trouble articulating it, which is not a good sign. I'll use some analogies. What I want to be able to do is provide services related to building devices, like assistive technology devices, and custom solutions for people with disabilities who rely on a wheelchair or some other technology. And you know, many of you have heard me talking about this so much, and you're probably tired of it. But these sorts of projects I really, really love doing. And in fact, Chris's annual review for his NDIS plan is just coming up. And one of the things that I just did was wrote a letter which in support of his application to explain some of the projects that we've been working on. So just this afternoon, I sat down and just opened a blank document and started typing, and began typing out some of the things that we've worked on. And the list just went on and on and on. And I got to like 2 pages of, and this is not like an explanation of what each one is, it's just, you know, a sentence or two of this project was for this project was to do this. And it's easy to lose perspective as you're working on things day to day. And I look back over what we've done since December 2017, which was when I started working with Nick, Chris's brother, and all of the different things that we've worked on in that time. There's a hell of a lot of it. Some of it has been put online. Almost none of it has been covered in video, unfortunately, which we really should do. But I really like to do a lot more coverage of it, and the intersection of home automation and DIY technology with assistive technology. So anyway, what's actually been paying my bills over the last little while is commercial projects for like contracting. And you've seen me talk about, which way do I go to get out of the camera view? You've seen me talk about the water cannon project and other automation projects. There are a couple of others that I'm working on that are under NDA, so I can't really tell you much about those, but those jobs are what has been keeping me going over the last couple of years. And more than keeping going, that side of things is really starting to work out. The contracting side is keeping me really busy. And so what I'm formulating in my head is this whole idea of what I've talked about previously being the super lab as a place or a service that is like a hackerspace in type environment, or a facility that I can use with all of the resources that I need to build whatever custom solutions are required for people that might come along. So someone might come along and have someone with muscular dystrophy, for example, and they can't use a regular keyboard on a computer. So we need to be able to make a specific device that fits their hand. And many people with muscular dystrophy, depending on the degree of physiotherapy that they've undergone, have hands that partly close up because of the shortening of muscles and things that happens. And so what happens is that you often have to figure out a way to build a computer input device that will suit their specific hand shape. And that sort of thing is not a mass market product. That sort of thing really has to be customized. And I love solving that sort of problem, like trying to design something to suit a specific need. So, bringing these trains of thought together, the idea of the super lab and providing these sorts of services, and the thing that's been paying my bills, which is the contracting work. What I'm heading towards here is taking what I've got here in this room, in my lab, and basically scaling it up to a point where I can produce boards locally in reasonable volume, like not as a contract manufacturer, but have the capability of, if I need to make a few hundred of a board, then it's not a problem. Everything is there ready to go. The machine's ready to go, the equipment's there. If I need to laser cut something. So you can think of it very much as being like a hackerspace sort of environment. Because working on these sorts of projects, you'll often need a combination of 3D printing, laser cutting, CNC machining, some custom electronics, some software. It's a whole lot of things all brought together and using whatever is best to solve the specific problem that you're dealing with at the time. So kind of being a problem-solving environment and having all of the resources around to do that without having to go out to external providers necessarily, unless it's necessary. Anyway, and yeah, Sion says hackerspace for one. Kind of, yeah. It's kind of like that. It's one of those things where I feel kind of really, really greedy talking about this, because it's like, imagine the dream that you get to hack around all day building cool stuff with all of the tools that you would want right there in your own personal hackerspace. That's basically what I'm describing. And yes, it's a big dream. And being able to support that financially through the commercial work that goes through it as well. All right. So Aaron says, given the purpose and niche market, is there any specific funding you could apply for? Possibly. I don't know. Yeah. I've never really been very good with things like grants and funding. And in fact, one person who has been very good at that is Lachlan. Aha, so this is a tie-in. It kind of relates to this whole road trip and the circumstances and where I'm going with this train of thought. So the big problem is, at the moment, I am operating 100% out of my house. We did a big renovation a few years ago, and I mean, I've talked about this many times before, so I'm kind of repeating myself. Basically, beside the house, we added a double garage that just sort of went off sideways from the end of the house. But instead of being a normal garage depth, it's close to a triple car depth. So, and it's not quite rectangular because the side wall comes in just because of the shape of the land that I'm on. So it's a little bit less than this, but it's kind of almost a 6-car garage. It's like a 5-car garage with a bit of a strange angle off it. And the back part of it is dedicated office space, and that's where I'm sitting right now. So you got no sense of direction from looking at the camera view. So through that wall, that is a dividing wall that divides this room off from the back of the garage. So as a home office slash lab goes, it's actually really, really good. And I couldn't really ask for much better. This room, and because I was fitting it up as a lab as it was being built, it is wired for it as well. So this room, this one room I'm in, has 72 power points in it. And the electrician ran 3 power circuits just for this room. It's also got, I think, about 20 or so gigabit Ethernet sockets in it. So, you know, there's power everywhere, there's Ethernet everywhere. It's really well set up for exactly what I want. But now it's got to the point where, so this comes back to the whole pick and place thing. My idea was to find something like a desktop pick and place machine, bigger than, you know, just the little desktops. I mean something like I was thinking something along the lines of a KO A4, so a reasonable size machine, but not, you know, not massive. And bring that home and use that to replace Mickle Make It. Basically as a direct drop-in replacement, so that I would go from having a machine that I'm constantly fiddling with and screwing around with feeders because they, you know, the plastic wears out, and having to recalibrate it all the time, and it runs really slow, so it only does like 450 components an hour. It's quite slow. It works. It's I'd rather be doing that than doing it by hand, but it doesn't have a lot of throughput. So really just take that component out of my current work arrangement, lift it out, and replace it with a more serious machine. That was what I had in my head. But then this opportunity came up with the guy that I'm buying this machine from, and he suggested, I can't remember, yeah, he had 3 of them, and he suggested a second machine. And at that point things started to get serious, and I began to think, 2 machines. Okay, that's quite a footprint now. I could not physically fit that in here. And in our house, because we've got so much stuff, there's so much of the house is dedicated to Superhouse and Freetronics related things, we don't have a spare room that that family can come and stay at. We've got a really big storage problem because everything is just jammed floor to ceiling with stock storage in the back of the garage and the packing area. I've got a CNC machine. You know, I've got all sorts of stuff. There's just physically large stuff everywhere. And in fact, we haven't had a car in our garage for years now because I've got 2 full height server racks in the garage, plus a big workbench and yeah, floor to ceiling racks full of Freetronics stock and all sorts of things. So it kind of tips over. There is this point where I have to think, if I tip over the threshold and rent some space, it means that I can move everything out of the house. So all the work related stuff will go. And then all of a sudden this room becomes like a guest suite. It's essentially a self-contained flat. Through that door is a bathroom. There's a shower and toilet and everything in there, and a basin. You could have like a little kitchen area in here. The way it was set up, we designed it so that this whole thing could be a self-contained flat. And our garage would be empty. We'd have storage all of a sudden. We'd have places to put things. So the downside, of course, is adding a bunch of rent. Like somewhere between $12,000 and $20,000 a year in rent. And that's a lot of money to come up with. But the contracting work is going really well, and it's at that sort of tipping point where I think I can risk it. I can take that leap and think we can sustain it and then grow beyond that, because it's kind of at the point where if I'm going to be doing more volume of making boards myself or working on more serious projects or more projects, I just need more physical room. So having more space, will also allow a little bit more income to happen. And this is the tipping point. A few weeks ago, I wasn't thinking seriously about doing this at all. A few weeks ago, I was thinking, I'll get a pick and place machine and I will shuffle some things, play Tetris and jam it in here, and then I'll be able to make boards faster. And that was really it. But now it's sort of, it's kept going, and my ideas are, my hopes, I suppose, my dreams are growing, and I'm starting to get excited about it. Okay. So, Pancake said, electrician 100% assumed it was for a grow house. Oh, I hadn't even thought of that. That's a good point. No, no. The electrician who wired it up, he knew all about Superhouse, and he did all of the custom wiring, all of the stuff wiring back to the switchboard, and so he was very aware of what I was doing. Now, what was I thinking about? Train of thought. The train of thought gone. That's how I cover rent. I don't think so. Although I wonder if I would show up on a thermal camera at the moment. Probably not. My power usage is not actually all that unusual. The power profile of what's in here, it's some computers, some soldering irons and test equipment and 3D printer and odds and ends like that. I do have a 3 kilowatt reflow oven, so when I turn that on, you notice it on the power meter. But the reason for having 72 power points is basically because there's so much to plug in, so much test gear and things. It's many, many very low power devices. It's just a numbers game. James asked, do you think those new Shelly units will get Oz certification soon? I asked that question. I sent a follow-up because some weeks ago, when I did that video about the Shelly Pro 4PM, I've got to get the name right, I was told that Australian certification was already underway and that it would be done within a couple of weeks. And that was, how long ago was that? It must be like 6 weeks or so ago. Anyway, I recently sent a follow-up email to Altico, who make the Shelly, saying, about that Oz certification, any updates? And I haven't heard a single thing. Right. Incognito, yes, it is Sunday morning. It is Sunday morning already. Is it? No, it's not. It isn't Sunday morning anywhere in the world yet. I'm at GMT plus 11 right now. So nowhere in the world will it be Sunday morning for another couple of hours. Oh, interesting. I don't know. So Maria says, my house uses 37,000 kilowatts per year. How much does a house in Australia use? No idea. I'm going to, let's see. I wonder if I can get that data, because I just recently, a little while ago, well, when? A month or two ago, we had a Power Pal installed, which is one of those things that measures the little pulses coming off the energy meter. And let's see, so it's saying in September, October, we used 888 kilowatt hours. Does that sound right? Let's see, 888 by that, so 10,656 kilowatt hours. That's, but I'm not even sure if that's all the correct data. 891. It's in this process of doing its update right now. Syncing. All right, I will let it finish its sync. Right now it says I'm using it at a rate of 2 kilowatts. Yeah, the house is using 2 kilowatts. If it is synced, I'm not even sure that it is. I'm not convinced. Let's have a look at the charts. I can see some big spikes. Probably when I turned on the reflow oven. Daily usage, 28.4 kilowatt hours. So by 3, it's 10,000, yeah, in the order of 10,000 kilowatt hours per year. So Marius, if you say your house uses 36,000 kilowatt hours per year, I'd be interested to know where all of that goes. Maybe it's heating? Yeah, so Pancake Legend says I use 2.5 kilowatts a day. And as I said, right now, my house is running at the rate of 2 kilowatts. But it has spikes and things, obviously. Turn on a kettle and all of a sudden it jumps up dramatically. It's mainly heating. Okay, yeah. So heating wise, we have gas ducted heating. So we use a small amount of power for running the fans and things for the central heating, like the blower. But but most of the energy input comes from the gas, burning the gas. Yeah. Frank says, I'm using 16.91 a day. 1.21 gigawatts, great Scott. Yes, incognito. Right. I don't know. What are we going to talk about? I'm half an hour into this, and it's not going to be a long stream tonight. So the stream will end very eventually, but it will... oh, hang on. I'm going to have to leave you hanging. Just a second. Just a second. I've got someone at the door. That's what that phone call was, and I didn't realize. So I'm going to hit mute, and I'm going to be back. And I'm back. That was unexpected. So, yes. So that phone call earlier was Simon, who is my client for the water cannon project, and he was coming past to pick up some boards. And I was expecting him to come by tomorrow. He drove past tonight. All right. No, it wasn't Sion. It was Simon. So, yeah. Brian says, it's surprising how much energy home networks use when you log switches, routers, etc., which are running 24/7. Yeah, so Ethernet switches and things, they can, yeah, they can pull a few watts each, and if you've got a few of them, so yeah, it adds up. I'm just checking on the PowerPal stats because I think it might have finished syncing. Has it caught up? I'm going to go back to the current figures. Oh, it's gone into, my phone is in dark mode and I don't like it. Come on. Makes it hard to see the chart actually. When it goes into dark mode on PowerPal, it messes up the the chart. The whole chart goes grayscale, and it makes it really quite hard to read. So currently still 2 kilowatts. Yeah, okay. So in October, all right, so now that it's finished syncing its data, my phone was actually a little bit behind. It hadn't got the end of the October data. So it's saying 898 kilowatt hours for October. So just that by 12, yeah, a little bit under 11,000 kilowatt hours. I don't know how representative that is. I don't know. Now, rack 32. Okay, yes, okay. This is something worth, this is something worth, I just saw Marius's comment. Yeah, just shove the cash under the door. Who was it? Frank. Frank said rack 32. Okay, check this out. See if this camera works. I was just doing these and this and this. So, and this. So, yes, there will be rack 32s once again back in stock, and these have all been assembled and ultrasonically cleaned and been through the dryer, etc. So they are ready to go, and I've done some of the testing. So I've tested SD cards and I2C. I've tested a few different functions on it, but I still need to do the Ethernet testing and the different power supply testing, because there are 3 different ways to power these boards. What is that for? Well, technically 4 ways, I suppose, and I need to test them all. And but anyway, this gets me to the point, which was what I want to do is ship these boards now with Ben's really cool new OXRS firmware. So, Jose asked a good question. I'll just do this wrap up on the rack 32s, and then I'm going to get back to the whole Superlab factory arrangement, because there is more to say about that. All right, so these boards, what I want to do is ship them with Ben's new state monitor firmware, because from what I've seen, it has some really cool config stuff now. Now, the way it used to be, there was a config file, and you would edit the config file with things like your MQTT broker information and just general other, config-y stuff. And then you would recompile the sketch and you'd upload it onto the rack 32. And what Ben has done is added a configuration interface. So when you power it up, if you've got an LCD attached to it, like this one, then it'll show its IP address and other information on the LCD. So what you can do is have it plugged into your network and power it up. It will use DHCP, so it'll get an IP address if you've got a DHCP server, which pretty much everybody does these days, and display its address. Then you can log into the web management interface on it and configure it through your browser. So you don't have to you don't have to edit the config.h and recompile it just to make some changes. And I figured that's a really good firmware to ship on them, but I don't have it building yet. I was getting some errors when I was trying to compile it, and I think it's because there might be a 2nd or a 3rd level library dependency that I haven't figured out. There are a number of components of that management software which have been broken off into libraries, like there is a library for the rack 32 supports in particular, like a hardware library for that. In fact, let's bring that up. GitHub right here, and you can see what I see. So what we can see are things like there is the SHA rack 32 ESP32 lib, and this adds the necessary hardware support for this particular board. There's the state controller firmware, state monitor firmware, there's an IO handler library, So this library can be used by different firmware. So Ben has really worked hard to make it, and Moin, I think, has been working on this, has really worked hard to make this quite modular. And oh yeah, there's the OLED library. Oh, there's nothing in that one. That's right, this one got moved to somewhere else. And then also in GitHub there is, oh no, what is it? OXRS? OXRS.io, that's right. It's the same name as the domain name, oxrs.io. There's the relocated library. So we've got the LCD driver library and the API, which I think is the management API, all sorts of stuff. Anyway, so what you need are various libraries installed in order to build this firmware. Ah, Sion, thanks for coming along. Yes, take it easy. So this firmware that I want to put on it, what I want to do is ship these boards with this firmware. Which one? Not that one. With this firmware. And this firmware depends on the various other libraries, which are all part of this ecosystem. And when I compile this, I initially got some errors because I didn't have everything totally up to date. And then I still get an error on, there's a thing called what? I think it is. AWT, or is it what? There's a web server. It's like an open web something. There's an Arduino web server library that it needs. So I've installed that, and I'm right at the point, basically I was working through all of this. I'll get it solved. I'll get this software building. But I was working through that to get it onto these Rack32s so that I can put them in stock and ship them for anybody that wants them. Yeah, okay. So that is the slide update on Rack32s. There are more sitting on my bench, almost ready. They will be ready soon. And okay, so getting back to the question, there was a question from, where is it? Oh yes, Jose said, how far would that facility be? Do you plan to go there every day? Okay, now this comes back to the sort of meta questions, the things I was alluding to earlier, because I've been thinking about ways to ease this transition and make it as minimally invasive as possible, like in terms of difficult on the family, because we've got one car. My son Tom is in year 11, so he's getting towards the end of year 11 now. Obviously it's right near the end of the year. He'll be doing year 12 next year, so he has to get to school. And if I'm working somewhere that I need to drive to every day, that there are so many of these knock-on effects. If I've got to drive somewhere every day, it means we need a second car. There's just no way around it. If it is somewhere that is close enough that I can get there most days, like on my bike or something, then we can delay getting a second car, which is a big expense. And so I was thinking about ways to slice it. One way to do it is to take the physically large stuff and relocate that, and set up something like my pick and place equipment and large things like laser cutter and drill press and CNC machine and other, all of the other machinery sort of stuff. Relocate that somewhere else and maybe some storage. But that means that I would then have to travel there in order to use that equipment, like going to a hackerspace when you want to do something instead of having it available. And cable tie. used Subaru Outback for sale. And yes, push bike, Simon says. Yeah, that would be my preference. Ideally, I'd like somewhere that I could ride my bike to, and there are some options. I'm getting to options. What I'm giving you right now is the background and all of the thinking that's leading to this. So, if I did something like relocate all of the Freetronics and Superhouse stock and storage, which takes up a significant amount of our garage, that would possibly give me room to keep all the manufacturing here. I could have a pick and place machine in the back of the garage. But that means every single day I would have to go to that location, do all of the order packing, take it to the post office, and come home again. Or if I put all of the assembly manufacturing sort of stuff in another location, it means whenever I want to do a batch of boards, I have to travel to that location, do the stuff, and come back again. And I've been going through all of these different scenarios of how I could slice the functionality and keep most of what I do at home and move somewhere else in order to relieve the pressure on home and to allow, you know, larger scale activity somewhere else. And any way I think about slicing it, it becomes a burden. And really the only realistic scenario I can think of is to take everything that I have now from a work point of view and transplant it to another location. Like pick up the whole lot and move it somewhere else, so that when I am there in work mode, everything is available. I can access all the tools, all the assembly equipment, all the manufacturing stuff, and then I can be fast and efficient while I'm in that mode and while I'm working on things without having to keep going backwards and forwards. And this is another one of those, you know, tipping it over the edge sort of things, where it's a difference between, oh, Bob, g'day Bob, thanks for coming along. So it's the difference between having, yeah, as I said, I was getting at this earlier, right at the start of this thing, where I was thinking about simply replacing one pick and place machine with a different pick and place machine versus, okay, now multiple machines and then potentially a bigger reflow oven. And then by the time you start expanding all of this, it's not a thing you do in the back of your garage anymore. Now, I know Sion is doing this sort of thing in the back of his garage, but I know that he is feeling the space constraint as well. Like he really has to work to keep everything fitting, and he's made some sacrifices basically to allow that to happen. So the typical question, Simon says rent house next door. Yeah. Yeah, so Jack's Tech said, is it worth having a logistics and warehousing company do Freetronics for you? That is one of the interesting questions as well, is what to do about Freetronics. That is another question that ties into all of this. I'm going to avoid talking about that right now. I think that's a topic for another time. It's kind of a big topic with lots of angles, lots of squirrels. All right, I'll avoid that one. So, where does this leave me? Okay, I ended up coming to a conversation with Lachlan from Melbourne Hackerspace, who many of you will know. And Lachlan has two large factories not too far from me. And a little while ago, he sent me, in fact, it was maybe a year ago or even longer. We had some, it was one of those casual conversations about, if you need some space sometime in the future, maybe you should come and talk to me, that sort of thing. And at the time, it was one of those way down in the future sort of ideas. And so we didn't really talk about it anymore at the time. And just recently, we've been talking about it again but much, much more seriously. Like, seriously to the extent that he stuck his factory into AutoCAD and worked out how to rearrange things to make space for me to move my equipment in. And so that is looking like a pretty good option at the moment. I've also been looking around at just general factory space around the area. Now, there is a factory that I just found out today has just been rented within the last couple of days, and it's one that I really, really liked. It's, for those of you who know this area, it is in Cool Store Road, Croydon, right near the train line, which is not great, but still. The location is fantastic. It's 164 square meters in size, so pretty decent size at a pretty good rate. And the location would be awesome because there's a bike track that goes right near my house, and the other end of the bike track is basically at the factory. Like, I could jump on my bike and be there in 10 minutes on a bike track and barely see a road the whole way. Would have been awesome. And then the factory is right adjacent to Croydon Main Street, so I'd be able to just, all the shops and things are right there. Very convenient for people to get to. Yeah, cable tie knows Cool Store Road. Yeah, Cool Store Road would be perfect. Anyway, I contacted the agent, and turns out that it has just been rented, like within the last day or so. Damn. Oh, Brian says, have you looked into making your own pick and place machine to use at home? I built mine around 8 years ago with 25 feeders. Yes, I do. It's right here. I've been using it for many years. How many feeders do I have on it at the moment? I think right now it's got 21. Yeah, it's got 21 feeders loaded right now. Yeah, that's Mick will make it, the thing I've been referring to. Yeah. But my needs are growing way beyond that now, which is why I'm getting these two commercial pick and place machines. Right, so Cool Store Road would be perfect. It would be brilliant. But it's a big commitment because it's 160. That particular factory was 164 square meters. It's a moot point now because it's not even available as of like yesterday. But if it was available, 164 square meters in Cool Store Road, great location, enough room that I would have breathing room to put in machines and set up a lab and like a dedicated. This is the thing, is that when I start making a list of all of the different things that I need to fit into it, there are lots of things that just take up space. Here's a classic example. For one of my commercial clients at the moment, I've been conformal coating all of the PCBs because this is the one for the water cannon, because they go into a really nasty environment. They're in an IP67 rated case, but still, we conformal coat everything to essentially make the PCB pretty much waterproof, and then it goes into an IP67 case with, a sachet of the little silica beads and things so that it stays nice and clean and it's happy. But spraying with conformal coating, it stinks. And ideally, I want a spray booth. So I want some kind of a proper spray booth with ventilation that sucks the air back out through it, and like hanging racks so I can put all the PCBs there and spray them. I currently do them in the back of the garage and it stinks. Okay, so you need a spray booth with lighting, etc. And also I've got UV lighting because the conformal coating has a UV marker in it. So after you've sprayed it, you can use the UV light to verify that the coating is completely covered everything. You don't have any spots that aren't covered. So now, Incognito says, I hear those water cannons are good for deterring foxes. Yeah, more than deter it. So now a spray booth. Okay, a spray booth needs a couple of square meters plus ducting going to it. And then when PCBs have been through the reflow oven, I have an ultrasonic cleaner. So at the moment, the ultrasonic cleaner is in there, in the bathroom. And then after they've been through the ultrasonic cleaner, which is like I use a water soluble, like a biodegradable detergent in that. And then they have to be rinsed in hot, clean water. And then they go into a dehydrator so that they dry and they end up perfectly clean. And then from there they go to conformal coating. And so now I'm probably going to need a dishwasher for washing PCBs. Once again, once you start listing this stuff out, by the time you look at the physical space required for all of this and to have room to work on things, doing this in a way that isn't jammed in Tetris, you just need square meters. It's what it comes down to. Yes. Cable tie says also good for testing IP67 rated enclosures. Yes. Yeah, but even IP67 isn't enough sometimes. I'm not going to go into that because that's related to a commercial thing. All right, Aaron said, what are you doing about ovens? Well, that's the next big question. And ovens are huge, like conveyor ovens are huge. At the moment, I've got a couple of Reflow ovens. I've got the small one, the old that I used to use, which is now in the back of the garage. I've got the T962C, which is the 3 kilowatt oven. That is in the back of the little bathroom here. So in that bathroom, you can't actually use it as a bathroom at the moment because I've put a rack in the shower. I took off the plumbing and just capped it off so you can't accidentally turn the taps on and have water coming out of the shower. So where the shower would be is actually a rack, like a big industrial rack, and on the rack is the Reflow oven. Above the Reflow oven is storage. To the left of the Reflow oven is the ultrasonic cleaner, and then there is a sink and everything in there that's used for cleaning boards after they've been through ultrasonics. Anyway, so where was I going with that? I don't know. Just that it's square meters. So one of the really nice things about what Lachlan is suggesting. So Lachlan has an existing business which is using his factories. And right now they are using 100% of both factories. But a lot of it, it's that classic situation. If you've got space, you will just expand to fill it until you hit the limits. And then you'll stop expanding, maybe. And so because there hasn't been any reason for him not to use the entire space, he's just used the entire space. So he's got like 600 square meters or something of factory, and they're using the whole thing. But a lot of it, it's just there is stuff put there because it doesn't matter. You can just put it there. And so what he's offered is to carve off the front part of one of his two factories and draw a line across the factory for the amount of space that I need, and then potentially that line can move, which is really, really cool because it means that what I can do is start off with an amount of space that will suit what I need for now, and then maybe we can come to an arrangement down the track where I move back a little bit and take on a little bit more of his space, and that way he is getting some rental income for his square meterage instead of just using it for miscellaneous storage, which it is at the moment. Things that haven't, like bits of equipment that they've put down and then not moved for 10 years because there's no reason to move it. Okay. Yeah, I've been seeing all of these comments about Tassie along the way, and I have been studiously ignoring them because that's a whole other subject. Tassie is beautiful. I love visiting Tassie. I would really like to live in Tassie as well. But not realistic right now. For now, I'm putting that out of my mind. Now, what are we doing? Yes, craft fair. Well, what's going on in the chat? Oh, thanks for the offer, Cable Tie, about moving stuff. Yeah, talking about moving stuff, this is a different scale of things. It's crossing over into the you can't pick stuff up by hand, you need a forklift sort of territory. Like the machines that I'm getting without any feeders or packaging or anything like that, just the base chassis of each of the pick and place machines I'm getting is I think around 240 kilos, and then you add feeders and it goes way up from there. So it's starting to get into the point where, oh, and the reflow oven, that's right, I'll get back to that thing in a moment. It's getting to the point where it's not just equipment that I can chuck a trolley under it and move it around or pick it up and move it. It's sort of starting to tip over into the light industrial sort of scale where you need a pallet jack or a forklift to move things around. And this is one of the things that is a really big benefit of leasing some space from Lachlan, which is that he has all of that. He's got a forklift and all of like a overhead gantry crane and all of the sorts of things that you use for moving stuff around, because his actual business is in relation to making stuff that goes on production lines. Not sure how much he would want me to talk about it publicly, so I won't go into it. But basically, his day-to-day business involves moving heavy stuff around, so it's not a problem, and he's all set up for it. Right. Okay. Now back to the question about reflow ovens. Yes, so that's right. So at the moment I've got the T962C, which is, so reflow ovens come in a few different varieties. They, depending on the heating method, like they can be infrared or convection, and they can be drawer type or they can be conveyor type, and you know, they can have multiple zones. They can have top and bottom zones with independent control. So many different variations on a theme. And what I've been using so far is the T962C, which is essentially the biggest non-conveyor belt reflow oven that money can buy. Like once you go beyond that point, you're up in conveyor belt territory. And so the operating principle is quite different. The way a static board reflow oven, like the one I've got, works, you put the board in, it's in one place, and then the oven cycles through the temperature profile. So the heat, soak, spike, what's the last one? I know it's cool, but yeah, maybe it is just cool. Heat, soak, spike, cool. Yeah, it goes through that process by progressively applying energy or by using the fan to suck cool air through and cool it back down again. The difference with the conveyor belt ovens is that those particular temperatures are physically at different locations along the conveyor belt. So the board moves along the conveyor belt and it goes through the heat cycle, and then it stays at a temperature and goes through the soak cycle, and then it gets to another point where it's hotter in the oven and it goes through the spike part of the cycle. So each part of the oven is at a static temperature and the board passes through them. The one that I've got, the entire oven temperature varies in order to follow the reflow curve. So in the short term, I don't have anything better. I've got the 962C. So what's going to happen is I'm going to probably be producing boards very, very quickly coming off the pick and place machine. And in about 3 minutes, it'll have produced enough boards to fill the oven. And then I'll put them in the oven and let it run its cycle and have to wait for it to finish before more can go into it. And that is going to suck. That's going to be, that'll be the major bottleneck in the whole process. So in order to be able to produce boards in an efficient way, what I really need is a conveyor belt based reflow oven. But the difference between a drawer reflow oven, which is like the one I've got, is really big for a reflow oven. It's nearly, I think it's about 1 meter wide. Almost yeah, it'll be about 1 meter wide and nearly 1 meter deep. So it's physically quite big. But conveyor belt ovens, once you get up into those, all of a sudden you're talking about like 4 meter long things that weigh many, many hundreds of kilos. So, right. And they're expensive, mostly because of shipping. Like you can get there is the classic T960, which is, I think they are about 3.8 meters long. They're physically really big. You can buy them brand new from China for ballpark 3,000 US dollars, like 4,000 Australian dollars, somewhere in that region. But then you got to pay like $1,500 for shipping to get them here because they're just so friggin' big. So yeah, so one of my next quests is going to be to do something serious about my reflow oven situation. In the short term, I'm going to have to just make do with the 962C that I already have. And in the long term, I'm going to see if I can find a conveyor-based reflow oven. All right, so Cable Tie said, where are the pick and place machines going to get stored when you bring them back? In the short term, they are going to Lachlan's factory. And so they're going to be loaded on the truck in Canberra, and then I'm going to drive it back with my dad, road trip. And so we're going to get them back. They'll be basically sitting on pallets. I'm going to take them to Lachlan's factory, and he's agreed to let me just, stick them in a corner somewhere while we figure out what to do next. That's going to be our transition. Brian says, have you seen the Neoden IN6? Yes, I most definitely have. I would love to have an IN6, or better still, an IN12 if I was being jealous. So the IN6 is the 6-zone model. The IN12 is the 12-zone model, which is physically quite a bit bigger. Yeah, Sion has an IN6 and he's really happy with it. All the reports I've seen of it are that it is a really, it's a really good oven for like a small conveyor oven. As conveyor ovens go, the IN6 is physically very small and it does a really good job. It's quite efficient. It takes a while to get up to temperature. You got to turn it on like 15 or 20 minutes before you need it. But then once it's at temperature, it's very predictable and it does a good job. But they're also moderately expensive. I think they're like $6,000, give or take. Yeah. Stephen said, thought my phone just went off then. No, that was Peter. Peter, what are you messaging me about? I didn't, just ding, okay. So, yes. So Gavin said, no 2-week rest stop at the border. Yeah, that was one of the things, is that it's been a few weeks that I've been talking to the seller of these machines about it, and we knew that border openings were coming soon, so we kind of made an arrangement a few weeks ago, and then it was on the basis that when the borders open, then we'll do something, and the borders have just opened. And in fact, I got yesterday I submitted a travel exemption, because there is in order to travel from Victoria through New South Wales into ACT, you need to, because a lot of Victoria is considered to be a red zone, you need to apply for a travel exemption and then take the paperwork with you. I applied for that and it was approved. And then today I got an email saying, you don't need the travel exemption anymore. It's like the area that I'm in, Maroondah, has been considered a red zone. It's just been taken off the list. It's no longer a red zone. I can freely travel into New South Wales and ACT with no exemption required. I've got proof of double vaccination and all of that sort of thing. But yeah, as of pretty much right now, it is possible to travel again, which is amazing. Right. Simon's asking Peter if it's lunchtime yet. Yeah. All right. Yes. I was the thing Stephen W said about, thought my phone went off just then, reminds me, I was listening to I don't know, last night I was listening to a podcast. What was it? Oh, that's right. It was a Stephen Kesting podcast about exploring the wilds of Canada. He was doing an interview with a guy who went looking for a ghost town in the deep north where you can die by frostbite or bear or drowning in rapids. And during the podcast, one of them had their phone that kept dinging, and every time it happened, I went, oh, "Where's my phone?" And it was on the It was, I'm just unmoderating Peter's comment. Try visiting Tasmania, you unclean disease carrier. I will visit. I will visit. I would love to visit. No, I think the drawbridge is still up, isn't it? Is it even possible to visit Tasmania at the moment? I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I am, as I said earlier, I'm not going to make this a long live stream tonight. And it's just, I was just going to say, it's just been me rambling the whole time. But that's what you should expect by now. This is the reality of my live streams. It's just me with a stream of consciousness or something. I feign consciousness. Yeah, so that's right. Reflow ovens, the point is they're big, they're expensive, I need one, which means I need space to put it. John, you come for the rambling, you stay for Steve. We should build an unstable walking robot. Right. Yes, so Peter says 14 days quarantine at the moment from December 15th if you're vaccinated, clear test up to 72 hours before. Okay. So Simon asked a good question. What time are you looking for all move to happen? That is a really good question. And this is all coming about really, yeah, I need to animate Steve. This is all coming about really quickly. It's taking, there's a little bit of mental whiplash involved because relocating where I am now to somewhere else was not really a serious consideration only a matter of weeks ago. And now I'm trying to figure out floor plans and where to put machines in another space. So part of it is going to depend on, well, it's not 100% decided that I am doing this. I should point that out. It seems to be very strongly leaning in that direction. It seems to be the practical and the sensible thing to do. And if I do, it's not 100% decided that I will be going to Lachlan's factory. I might end up going somewhere else. That's still possible. But Lachlan is being very, very accommodating and is he's in the process of doing a bit of a factory cleanup. And I think me talking to him about all of this has kind of prompted him to think, well, I'll do this cleanup and maybe John will come along and use the space and that would be good. And if I don't, then they've done a factory cleanup and it's still worthwhile anyway. So no harm either way. And yeah, so that's looking like a really good option. Oh, one other good thing about it is Lachlan's factory is, I haven't actually counted, but I've looked down the street. I think it's approximately 5 factories, maybe 6 factories away from my jiu-jitsu gym. On the same road, same side of the road. It's literally a couple of 100 meters down the footpath from Summit Jiu-Jitsu, which would be awesome. So I just need to make sure that there are like shower facilities or something, because I could, yeah, now that things are starting to get better. The gym was closed for a long time, obviously through COVID, and BJ was doing video classes, so people would set up mats at home and do drills with tackle dummies and that sort of thing. But I haven't, when was the last time I went to it must be about a year since I have physically been to the gym and actually tried to strangle someone unconscious or stop them ripping my arm out of the socket. And I would really like to be able to do that. So, yeah. If my workplace was just a few 100 meters down the road from Summit, I think I'd be making a few trips down to the gym each week. which would be awesome. Okay. Yeah, so Bob P said, someone joked about renting the house next door, but seriously, is buying the house next door and turning it into your factory a viable option? Wouldn't be like you'd be loud or obnoxious. Yeah, so there are some issues with that. First, buying a house, buying a second house, not on the cards for me in terms of finances. And the second thing is that what I'm going to be doing will be a little bit loud and obnoxious at some point. And the big thing is the air compressor. That's the thing. So running a couple of pick and place machines means running a loud air compressor a lot. And it's the sort of thing that you can get away with in a quiet suburb like this occasionally. You know, the neighbours will fire up a chainsaw every now and then, or someone will, run a compressor to do some spray painting and it'll be running for 20 minutes and then it'll be off, or, someone will do some whippersnipping. That sort of thing goes on. There's just general ambient noise. But if I had an air compressor here in my garage that was running like a couple of hours every day, I would have noise complaints for sure. Absolutely for sure. Simon says, bury it. Yeah, there's so Lachlan in his factory has one very big air compressor that they use for a whole lot of their, because they build production lines, basically production line equipment. They need to set it up and power it from compressed air. So he has a big air compressor for that purpose already, and he has another air compressor, which is the old one, the obsolete one that he hasn't used since he got the new one, and he said that I can make use of that. And that one is actually inside a box with insulating bats all around it to try to make it quiet. So it's probably not too bad when it's running. Yeah. So Alistair, you're here. Good to see you. I am so sad that I can't come and visit people when I'm in Canberra. The last couple of years has been really isolating, and not seeing people, like LCA has been my annual opportunity to see really some of my favorite people in person. I get to see them once a year, and without LCA last year, there's been this big gap in my life. It's very sad, and so many smart, nice, cool people are in Canberra. And I'm very sad that I'm making this trip. So getting in the truck tomorrow morning, driving to Canberra, staying Sunday night, loading the truck Monday morning, driving back to Melbourne. And I don't really get to see anybody, which is sad. I would love to do a bit of a road trip sometime. Maybe LCA will come back to Canberra. Yes. Yes. All right. Simon says restrictions were further eased here in Canberra yesterday. You can visit some people. Yeah. Cool. I probably could, or there might be ways to arrange it. If I could stay, that's the thing, is that I'm just not going to be there for long. I'm arriving in the evening and then staying overnight, loading, and then getting on the road to drive back to Melbourne. If I could hang around for a day or two, like meet up with people for lunch or dinner or something, that would be awesome. But just because of the logistics of making this work, I'm hiring the truck and paying for it by the day. My dad is coming with me, so I don't want to, take up a whole bunch more of his time. I've got family stuff going on during the week as well, so I need to be back as quickly as I can. It just means that I can't hang around and go and say hi to people in person, which I would love to do. Alistair, thank you very much for that offer. That's really generous. So yeah. Oh, and also I have family in Canberra. My aunt and my sister both live in Canberra. So there are many reasons to visit and to stay and be social. It's just not practical this time. Alrighty. Oh, cable tie. That was my daughter's 21st party. Yeah, that went well. That was good. Because of COVID restrictions, obviously, we couldn't really do the traditional big 21st, but we had several small events over several days, and yeah, that was good. Thanks for asking. All right, now I'm going to wrap it up, I think, even though this is way shorter than my usual rambly 2+ hours, because what is it? Yeah, so it's 9:20 now, and I don't have much to pack, but I do want to make sure that I am sorted for tomorrow, because my dad is turning up first thing in the morning, and then we're going to be at the truck rental place as they open and getting on the road right away. Yeah, it must be lunchtime then. Supper time, says Peter. And Simon says, will you be able to test P&P machines before time? Probably not. Yeah, so this reminds me though, the thing that I was starting to talk about before was time frame for all of this. Part of it is building all of the stuff that is necessary to create the environment, and that is going to be a huge job. So Lachlan's factory is basically, it's a high clearance factory, big enough to drive a semi-trailer into, huge roller door on the front, and it's open. It's like factory 2 is, I think, 270 square meters or something of open space full of stuff. And I need a clean environment in order to set all of this stuff up. So what I'm planning to do is, if I end up using, getting some space in Lachlan's factory, I'm gonna have to build walls and a roof and seal it and bring in air, and by air I mean like ventilation air, and maybe set up like a little positive pressure thing with filtered air coming in. So I need to build a box inside his factory to put all of this stuff in, and that box needs to be big, like 30 square meters big or something. So what I'll need is like a workroom similar to what I'm in now, and then I'll need the assembly area, which is where the pick and place machines and things will go. So there is a whole lot of construction that will need to be done, and that's going to take time and money. So that is all very unknown right now. I just don't know how this is going to happen. It's like details. All right. Yes, fun times, as Simon says. Anyway, I'm going to, on the trip, I'm going to try to post a couple of things. I might have, I don't quite know how I'm going to pull it off yet. But as I said, I might be able to post some stuff from my phone, and I might post some things to Patreon and to GitHub sponsors, since I partly have them to thank for making this possible as well. So thanks to everybody that does support me on Patreon or GitHub sponsors, and I will I might post some little updates during the trip to those folks, and I will record what I can and report back at the end. So you will see, you will see. All right. What was that? Alistair says, if you get stuck, set it up in a tent outside. It worked for Musk. Yeah. All right. I am going to call it a night right here. But thank you very much for coming along to this out of schedule live stream. Why? I don't know where that energy came from. I just used up my week's energy in about 5 seconds. Okay. I am going to wrap it up now. Thank you very much. Have a great Sunday morning without me. It'll be relaxing. You can sleep in. And I will talk to you all really soon. Thanks. Bye.